Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm an employment counselor with Second Chance Employment Counseling. In today's video workshop, we'll be addressing the topic of interviews. Being able to successfully navigate interviews will lead to greater job success, improved communication skills, and confidence. Second Chance is supported through Employment Ontario. We offer a range of services, programs, and supports that are free to both job seekers and employers looking to hire. For more information about our services, please visit our website and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. During today's workshop, we'll cover a number of topics about interviews, including social media, how to get ready for your interview, and the different types of interviews you may encounter. We'll then go through some common questions that employers like to ask. These questions are not industry specific, but they can be used as a guide to answer industry specific questions. After that, we'll talk about what to do after the interview is over. Your interview really starts when you first apply to the job. Today, more and more employers use social media to quickly screen potential candidates, so it's a good idea to consider what your social media says about you. When looking at your social media, you want to make sure that there is nothing that will interfere with your candidacy. Your social media should present a positive image of yourself, and you want to make sure there's nothing that will deter the employer. If you have social media, you can also consider increasing your privacy settings or removing pictures and content that you feel are not a good representation of who you want to be to that employer. Another idea is to have hyperlinks on your digital resume that will provide links to professional networking sites such as LinkedIn. This will allow the employer to see related employment information. Having a LinkedIn page can act as an immediate reference, as it can show the employer your endorsed skills as well as groups and communities that you're associated with. You can also use social media to help with researching more about companies you may be interested in working for or that you have upcoming interviews with. Most companies today have several social media platforms that allow them to connect with customers. During the interview, you can use your research as a way to start tailoring your answers. Many businesses use language, words, or business lingo that is associated with their particular type of business. Using their words and language will allow you to connect with the employer and demonstrate that you understand what the company does and what is important to them. A common question that employers ask is, why do you want to work here? Doing your research will allow you to answer this question thoughtfully, and it will allow you to demonstrate that you can be a problem solver for the company by identifying what you can do for their business. Other items to be aware of when you're doing your research include the size of the company, number of employees, major products or services, the reputation within the community, values, major weaknesses, and any recent changes that may have happened at the company. Being aware of this information will show the company that you understand not only what they do, but who their customers are, their competition, and how you as an employee can help the company. You should also try and find out as much as you can about the position. Ask yourself, why is this position open? Is it a new or existing position? What could the other responsibilities be beyond what's in the job posting? Finding answers to these questions will help you be the problem solver the company is looking for. Finally, if you can, find out more about the interviewer. You can ask who this is during the initial invitation to the interview. Google search their name or find them on the company directory. If you have LinkedIn, try writing a short message to them, such as, "Hello, my name is so-and-so. I have an interview with you for the advertised position. I was hoping to connect and I look forward to meeting with you on the day of the interview." Connecting like this will allow you to learn a little bit more about the person or people interviewing you, which can help you feel more comfortable during the interview. We'll now take a look at planning for the day of your interview. Some of the information here is more of a reminder, but it's good information. You're already stressed and anxious enough without having to worry about other factors on the day of your interview. Rule number 1 is don't be late. To avoid this, you want to make sure that you know exactly where you're going. Are you driving or are you taking the bus? If you're driving, consider the time of day your interview is at. If it's early in the morning or late in the afternoon, you will have to contend with more traffic. If you're traveling outside of town, do you know where you can park? Will you have to pay for parking? Driving there and finding the answers to these questions before the interview will make it much easier the day of. If you're busing, knowing how long it will take and if there are transfers will let you know what time to get on the bus. You don't want to be in a rush to get there, as this increases your stress and will make it harder to focus once the interview starts. You'll want to arrive 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. Don't go in any sooner, as then it becomes an awkward wait. If you arrive too early, take a walk, calm yourself down, and tell yourself you got this. Pumping yourself up with positive talk is a great way to get ready for the interview. If you arrive just on time, you won't have time to do this. The second part of planning your day is knowing what to wear. Interview clothes are an important part of your presentation at the interview. Make sure your clothes are clean, comfortable, and that they fit. When thinking of what to wear, we often hear the term dress conservatively. What this means is choosing clothing that is not going to distract the employer from what you're saying. You want the employer to be focused on what you're saying and not what you're wearing. In terms of other accessories to your clothing such as perfume, make sure you go light on these items. Many workplaces today are scent-free and don't allow for strong-smelling perfumes. Another reason is that your interviewer may be sensitive to strong smells or perfumes, and this would make for an uncomfortable interview for the employer. Remember, you want the employer to remember what you said and not what you wore. We'll now move into steps to how you can successfully prepare for an interview. Success in an interview comes down to practice, practice, and more practice. Very few people can just wing an interview and be successful. For most of us, we need time to practice. We need to work on our ability to sell our skills, to share our experiences, and tell coherent stories. Without practice, our answers can be jumbled, incoherent, or you may not end up answering the question. There are several ways which you can practice, such as writing out potential answers to questions, practicing with friends and family, using a mirror, or even creating video records of yourself to make sure you're using proper body language, tone, and appropriate voice level. In many ways, preparing for an interview is like studying for a test, and in this case, a pass means getting a job. As part of your preparation for the interview, you also want to make sure you have both current resumes and a list of references. You should have at least 3 copies of your resume with you, 2 for the interviewers and 1 for yourself. You also want to make sure you're providing the same resume that you originally applied with. You should also have a list of references. After you're invited to an interview, your first couple of phone calls should be to your references. You want to make sure they're still willing to be a reference, as well as make sure their contact information is correct. Also, letting your references know the job you're being interviewed for can help them start to think of how they're going to share your skills with the employer when they call. Most employers are satisfied with 2 or 3 references, although this will depend on the employer. And even if the employer doesn't ask for references at the end of the interview, always offer to provide them. The last step in your preparation for the interview is to write down several questions you have about the position, the company, or even the interviewer. Having prepared questions shows the employer that you have put thought and effort into this interview. Make sure to write down your questions before the interview. After a 45-minute interview, you will have trouble recalling good questions off the top of your head. Again, good preparation is going to lead to a good interview. Make sure your questions are open-ended. That is, they cannot be answered with a yes or no. Asking open-ended questions allows for further discussion about how you can adapt your skills and knowledge to the position. Good questions will also reveal more information about the company and benefits of working there. Asking questions is your chance to interview the employer. You want to make sure that the work environment suits your skills, expectations, and personality. Asking questions such as, what are your expectations of me in the first 3 months? How do you measure success? And how would you describe the work culture here? All these questions will allow you to make an informed decision about whether this job is a good fit for you. Also, good questions can lead to further discussion and provide you with a chance to provide more information about your skills and experience. During the interview itself, here are a couple of quick tips to remember. As we discussed, show up 10 to 15 minutes early. It's also important that when you enter to treat everyone with respect, so shake hands, smile, and try your best to relax. It's important to make a good impression with the receptionist and other staff, as employers will often go back to them after the interview to ask how you interacted with them. If you said in the interview that you're friendly and outgoing, but failed to introduce yourself to any of the staff, then the employer might not believe what you said. During the interview, listen to the questions carefully, and if you don't understand the question, have the employer restate or clarify the question with the interviewer. It's important that you address the question in your answer, and asking to have your question clarified shows the employer that you want to give the right answer. An employer would rather clarify a question than have you give the wrong answer. Another tip is to give yourself 10 seconds to think of a good answer before starting to respond. An interviewer is not expecting that you have the right answer right away. Take a deep breath before answering. Remember to speak slowly, clearly, and with appropriate volume. Talking slowly will stop you from stumbling or stuttering through your answers. Being asked to repeat something because the employer couldn't hear you or understand you will cause you more stress during the interview. We'll now discuss the different types of interviews you may encounter. Each of these interview types are used for different reasons and at different stages of the hiring process. The 4 different interview types we will be exploring are screening, informal, group, and panel interviews. The first type of interview we will discuss are screening interviews. Screening interviews are usually done over the phone or virtually. They are often short, about 15 minutes, with questions requiring a yes or no answer. Screening interviews are used by employers to quickly find out if you, the candidate, have the essential skills required to perform the role. They may include questions about specific levels of education, certificates, and experiences. In some cases, if you do not have the requirements for the position, you will not proceed past this point in the hiring process. Other employers will ask questions like, "Why did you apply?" and "Tell me about yourself," as a way to quickly gauge your interest and motivation for the position. With screening interviews, it is important to take this call. If you ask the employer to call back at a later time, most employers will move on to the next candidate and will not call you back. Your goal with any screening interview is now to get an in-person interview. Group or panel interviews are different styles of in-person interviews. Panel interviews are the most common. This is a typical interview where you are being interviewed by 1, 2, or maybe even 3 people, with each of them asking questions about your skills, experience, and motivation for the job. Your goal with this interview is to share your skills, experience, and motivations for the position. These interviews can be more technical in nature, as the employer is often looking for specific requirements and education. On the other hand, group interviews are where you are being interviewed along with several other candidates at the same time, with 1 or 2 interviewers asking questions. Group interviews operate differently than panel in that the employer is looking for a different set of skills. Where panel interviews can be more technical with a focus on hard skills, group interviews tend to be the opposite. That is, they focus on soft skills and your ability to interact with people. In the past few years, we have seen a rise in the use of group interviews, especially in customer service and sales roles. In these positions, the employer wants to find candidates who can interact with people, demonstrate good communication skills, and solve problems on the fly. It is a good idea to ask during the initial invitation to an interview what style the interview will be, as this will help you brainstorm what type of skills the employer will be after. Also, if you know that you're going to have a group interview, give yourself more time to complete the interview process, as group interviews tend to be longer than panel interviews. The last type of interviews is informal interviews. Informal interviews are those that happen outside the normal interview parameters. Informal interviews can happen at job fairs, networking events, or even when handing out resumes. Informal interviews are often unstructured, and employers are looking to get a feel for the candidate. Questions such as, "Why are you interested in this field?" or "What made you apply today?" are common informal interview questions. During informal interviews, it is a good idea to have an elevator pitch you can use to sell your skills and experience to an employer. Usually a pitch is about 30 seconds or so and encapsulates your skills, experience, and goals. You'll also want to include a unique piece of information, such as a specialization or accomplishment. You want to have skills and experience that will stand out to the employer, or something that they will be able to remember you by. At the end of the interview, remember to get a business card. Getting contact information will allow you to follow up with the employer the next day. When you follow up, you could say something like, "Hi, we had a brief conversation about my interest in working for your company. I was the person who had ABC skills. I would love to continue our conversation. Do you have time for coffee?" Following up with employers and building your network is a great way to get interviews. We will now move on to common questions. Remember, these are not industry specific, but you can answer industry specific questions with the approaches we will discuss. As we go through these questions, it is a good idea to practice your answers before your interview. With several of the questions, you can even write out what you want to say and practice with friends, family, or in front of a mirror. You want to be comfortable with speaking about your skills and experience, and this comes with practice. Often one of the first questions employers will ask is, "Tell me about yourself." Not only is this question open-ended, but it's also the first question, making it one of the most difficult to answer. At this point, you've just started the interview and are still a little nervous. Having a strong answer to this question will allow you to build confidence and feel good about yourself as you move forward through the interview. With this question being asked in nearly all interviews, you can prepare and practice your answer ahead of time. So, what are employers looking for when they ask this question? Employers are wanting to learn more about your achievements, experience, training, and education. In creating your answer, you want to keep your skills focused on the position you are being interviewed for. You may have lots of education and experience, but these should be narrowed down to the most important highlights. When answering this question, people do tend to struggle with how much information to share, or because they are nervous, they don't know when to stop talking. A good way to avoid this, and this goes for all questions, is to ask yourself, is the information relevant? Am I selling the right skills to the employer? When creating your answer, you will want to focus on 4 to 6 main points, and your answer should include a focus on your hard skills. Hard skills would be any education, years of experience, certificates, and relevant training you have. Here we have a good example of an answer for telling about yourself. As you read through it, you can see there is a focus on hard skills and why this individual wants to continue working in their field. Employers like to know what motivates you to work, and your answer can provide a good opportunity to talk about your motivations. The last point is where the individual talks about a 12% increase in sales. This is called an achievement statement. Achievement statements often focus on a singular accomplishment and will include a number or stat which is tangible or concrete to the employer. It also provides excellent evidence of your success. If you can include an achievement statement in your answer, it can make for a very impactful statement about what you can do for the company. Remember to practice and write out your achievement statements, as during the interviews you will want them to be clear and concise. The second question we'll take a look at is, what do you know about the company, or why do you want to work for us? It's another popular question that often happens very early in the interview. Employers like to ask this question because they want to find out which candidates have taken the time to prepare for the interview. Employers also want to know if you've done your research, because employers want to hire people who already know a little bit about the company, how it works, and what they're trying to achieve. To answer this question, you'll want to do some research about the company. So we'll take a look now at some good places to start. To start your company research, spend some time on their website, as well as their social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You should also consider subscribing to their email alerts to get the latest information about the company. Another great site is Glassdoor. Glassdoor provides employee reviews of various employers. It's a good source of information about how the company interviews, their benefits, and other information about working for them. You should also check out LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great resource as you can explore their company page as well as individual staff pages. This can help you learn more about staff roles and retention. Good retention and long-term employees point to a company that treats their employees well. Craft an answer that identifies things you find interesting about the company and why you'd like to be part of that team. What is your greatest weakness is another question that people struggle with. Employers like to ask this question as it will demonstrate how well you know yourself. Employers want to know if you can be self-reflective and identify weaknesses you may have. Also, identifying a weakness lets an employer know that as an employee, you'll ask questions, learn, and be receptive to feedback. Your weakness answer has two parts. The first part is to state your weakness. The second part is to demonstrate the steps that you've taken to either work on or overcome your weakness. Your weakness can also be about the position you are applying for and what you will do to learn this skill in the first few weeks of the job if you are hired. A good weakness will also be unique to you. Try your best to stay away from stock answers such as, I'm a perfectionist, so I take longer on tasks. You'll also want to make sure that your weakness does not represent a large part of the job that you will be doing. Stating a weakness like, I'm not good with computers for an office position is not a good answer, as your weakness represents a large part of the job you will be doing. Let's now take a look at a simple example. Here we can see a good example of a greatest weakness answer. The answer here demonstrates how to first state your weakness and then follow up with how you have improved on this weakness and the steps you have taken. Remember, the more unique your weakness, the better your answer will be. It will show the employer that you have really given some thought about where and how you have struggled in the past. Additionally, if your weakness is the result of a disability and you feel that you may require accommodations or special training, this would be a good time to bring it up with the employer. Demonstrating to the employer that you understand your weakness and what you will need from them to do your job will give the employer more information and confidence in your abilities. A good weakness answer will take time to create. A good idea is to think back on your work history and think about where you've struggled in the past and how you overcame it. This could provide the starting point to a strong answer. Another popular question employers like to ask is, why do you think you're the right person for this job? This is the stress question, as it puts the pressure on you to demonstrate your skills and experience in the form of pitches or arguments for your ability to do the job. With each of your pitches, they should be concise and straightforward. You will want to make sure your pitches are understandable and coherent. As we discussed earlier, you'll want to focus on hard skills, as these will provide concrete evidence of your ability and success in previous jobs. Another question I get asked is, how do I not sound overconfident when answering this question? This is a good question, as there is a fine line between confidence and overconfidence. Your tone of voice, enthusiasm, and choice of words will all play a part in creating a confident sounding answer. Remember to practice, and you will find the right tone and words without sounding overconfident. In the next slide, we will discuss how to create and structure your pitches. To create your pitches, you will first want to brainstorm what the important qualifications, skills, and abilities needed in this position. A good idea is to read over the job posting. Based on what you see in the posting, pick your top 3 or 4 skills where you really shine. Ask yourself, what are the most important skills I bring to this position? What are your most important accomplishments, and how do I stand out from other candidates? Once you have your top 3 or 4 pitches, it's time to structure them. Again, your pitches should be concise and focused on your accomplishments. Try your best to include hard skills, accomplishment statements, and concrete examples. This will strengthen your arguments while providing evidence of your success. Try to get each argument down to a short, coherent story that the employer can follow. Remember, you are selling yourself to the employer with these arguments, so make sure the employer understands why you are sharing these stories. Again, as I stated at the start, ask yourself if the information you are sharing is relevant to the position. It may be necessary to cut out details to shorten your arguments down to the essential information. If you are currently not working, employers may ask you why you are currently not working. Your last job could have ended for various reasons. If you were laid off from your previous job, then state this. Let the employer know what you have been doing since the layoff and show your eagerness to get back to work. Depending on your time out of the labor force, the employer may also ask, why do you want to work? Or what have you been doing since your last job? With any of these questions, the employer wants to see evidence that you are indeed ready to get back to work. Perhaps you went back to school, or maybe you've been volunteering. Let the employer know this. Remember to talk about your enthusiasm for the offered position and keep it focused on the positive. Another scenario is that you left or were fired from your previous job. These answers tend to be more difficult, especially if the job ended badly. One thing you never want to do is blame anyone else for what happened at a previous job. Try to focus on the positive aspects of your previous job and how excited you are to start something new. Your answer could have many variations. If you have a unique situation as to why a job ended and you're not sure what to say, I would encourage you to discuss it with your employment counselor. We will now discuss situational and behavioral questions. These types of questions are asked to measure a candidate's ability to solve problems, make appropriate decisions, and see how flexible they are with given situation. A few examples are, tell me about a time when you dealt with an angry customer. What was the most challenging aspect at a previous job? What was a conflict you had at a previous job and how was it resolved? Employers will ask several situational questions during an interview. Again, for these questions, focus on concrete examples and hard skills. This is also the time where, in your own interviews, employers will ask industry-specific situational questions. The good news is that any situational or behavioral question can be answered using the same approach. Situation, action, result, or SAR, is a useful approach to answer these types of questions. When telling stories to friends and families, our stories are not always in order. We may backtrack, forget details, or not be able to summarize the story very well. All of these things we want to avoid in an interview, and using SAR helps with this. SAR helps us break down our examples into coherent and concise statements. It helps us organize our thoughts so that we don't get confused when we're telling our story. Having a coherent story also helps the employer follow along, which is important when they are listening for skills and abilities. To prepare for your interview, research different situational and behavioral questions for your field of work. This will give you ideas about the types of questions you will be asked. Looking at these questions will help you brainstorm stories that you can tell during the interview. The more stories you have that will showcase your skills and abilities, the better prepared you will be. The following is a great example of a situational conflict resolution answer. I want to point out the use of the assertive language in the answer. The individual answering is constantly using I statements to describe their actions and feelings. This is important because the focus of the story should be on you and your actions, not your coworkers or boss. As we can see, the situation is simple and straightforward and summarized very well. The individual then walks the employer through the actions they took to try to resolve the problem. Breaking your actions down into steps is a great way to make sure you're mentioning all the points that you want to make. At the end, we have the result, again summarized very well. Results do not always have to end positively. Instead, you could talk about what you learned as a result and how you've made changes to better yourself or how you help the company make changes to its policies. Practicing your situational answers is a great idea. You may even want to write them out and rehearse how your situational answers sound. The more situational questions you're able to answer before the interview, the better prepared you will be. In recent years, employers have started to ask wage expectation questions more frequently. The employer may want to know your previous wage, along with your current wage expectations. Essentially, the employer wants to know that they can offer you a reasonable wage without having to be concerned you are continuing to look for a higher paying job. Employers invest a lot of time and money into their staff through training, onboarding, and paperwork. An employer wants to know that the offered wage will meet your expectations and that they are making a good investment by hiring you. To prepare for this question, again, you'll want to do your research and find the salary range for your level of position. Your asking salary range will also be based on your experience and credentials. To start your research for this question, there are websites you can explore to get an idea of an appropriate wage range. The first is the Canada Job Bank, which allows you to explore different careers as well as the average wage range for careers in each province and larger cities. To find this page, search Job Bank Explore an Occupation in Google and it should be the first link. Some companies will also post their yearly wages. This can sometimes be difficult to find, but they are a great resource to help you identify what wage to ask for. As you can see in the example, it is important to give a range to the employer and say that you are open to negotiating. Remember to be ready to negotiate during the interview, as employers want to know what your expectations are so that they can factor this into the hiring decision. Another popular question employers like to ask is what you like least or most about your previous positions. This question can be in regard to a specific position or in general over the course of your career. Typically, when we think back on previous jobs, we tend to remember the big picture. Things such as how we were treated as an employee. Was the management team effective in creating a good working atmosphere? Were you challenged? Did you feel valued? Employers want to know what type of atmosphere you would flourish in and in what roles you might excel. Often, employers already have an employee style in mind. It might be a leader or a follower, someone who is detail-oriented or thinks about the big picture. When creating your answer, think about the position and put yourself in the employer's shoes. What type of person would you want to hire for this position? Thinking like this will help you craft an answer that focuses on the facets of your previous jobs that the employer will want to hear about and make you a better candidate for the position. Let's take a look at an example. As we can see in the example, this person takes a big picture approach when discussing their career. When bringing up aspects of previous jobs that you didn't like, stay away from criticizing management or leadership, as this will only reflect negatively on you. You want to keep everything positive during the interview, so keep your dislikes focused to small aspects of the job that just didn't work for you. There may be positions that you've applied to where you feel overqualified. For an employer, this could be an area of concern, and you could be asked the following question. As we discussed earlier, employers want to invest in an employee who they feel will stay with the company for some time. Their concern about you being overqualified is justified when they are spending time and money to onboard and train you. A company is thinking that you may move on to another company and position that is more in line with your skills and education. To answer this question, you want to reinforce your interest in working for the company and that you would be an excellent fit for the position. There could also be several reasons for your willingness to take a job that you may be overqualified for. Perhaps you've been wanting to work for the company for a long time and see this as a way to get in and then move up. You may also have tried a higher level position but now want to return to the work that you started in. The important factor is to focus on alleviating the employer's concerns and focus on how the work you will be doing for the company excites you. As we can see in this example, the individual would like to return to the work that they were doing. The individual adds his excitement to return to the type of work and what they are looking forward to. By addressing the employer's concerns directly and confidently, you will have a better chance of being successful with your answer. Another important point is to not dismiss the employer's perspective that you were overqualified. Even if you feel that you are not, address the employer's concerns and let them know that you are looking forward to being challenged or how your expertise is going to support the team. Our next question will not always be asked depending on your situation, but it has become a common question as job seekers today are constantly changing careers. Your decision as a job seeker to change careers or try different types of work is entirely yours. However, from an employer perspective, they may have several concerns about how your previous career, skills, or education will apply to this new position. Employers also want to know that you understand what you're getting into. Employers don't want to hire someone just to have them quit because that person didn't understand certain aspects of the job. You, as a job seeker, need to prove to the employer that you've put the work in to be knowledgeable about this new career. Your answer should consist of the relevant transferable skills you will be utilizing in this new field. It should also include all the research that you've done that makes you feel confident you can be successful and take on the responsibilities of the role. Let the employer know if you've done any additional schooling or courses, or if you've talked to someone working in this field. All of this will provide more evidence that you are ready and aware of the challenges that come with this new career. As we can see in the example, the job seeker highlights to the employer what they have done to prepare for their career change. Other factors influencing your decision might be shrinking opportunities in your current field, or perhaps you've recently moved and your previous career is no longer an option. As I stated, each case is different. Be sure to share these motivations for a new career by being enthusiastic and excited for the change. Initiative questions help the employer determine your ability to work independently and resolve work issues on your own or with a team. Employers like to know you can be counted on to complete the necessary work without having someone stand behind you. To structure an initiative answer, you can use the previously talked about SAR approach to answer these types of questions. A good initiative story will help portray you in a positive light to the employer, and it will also help demonstrate your ability to think on your feet and recognize what needs to get done. Here is a good example of an initiative answer. As we can see, it follows a situation, action, result approach, or SAR. Your own example doesn't have to result in a raise, but a good initiative may end with an increase in business efficiency, increased store safety, better teamwork, or a better way of helping the company achieve its goals. This completes the common question portion of our presentation. Interview questions are designed to be challenging, and there will always be one or two questions that you didn't prepare for. However, if you practice and are able to confidently talk about your skills and abilities, as well as have a good grasp on your arguments and pitches, you should be able to answer any question with confidence. We will now move on to the last stages of the interview. There are illegal questions that employers are not allowed to ask during an interview. These illegal questions are meant to protect you, the job seeker, from discrimination by the employer. There are ways employers get around some of these illegal questions, and we'll touch on them now. For age, employers cannot ask how old you are. Instead, they will ask if you're over the age of 18, and you can answer this with a yes or a no. Some employers do need to know whether you're over a certain age before they can hire you, as there are age restrictions based on the type of job and company policies. Another legal question is whether or not you have a disability or an ODSP. However, on some applications, you'll see a question asking if you require accommodations to perform the job. Again, this is answered with a yes or a no. If you do have a disability, think about the work you will be doing. If your disability is not going to impact your work, then you can answer no, as you will not need an accommodation to do the job. Another legal question is around criminal records. An employer cannot ask if you have a criminal record. However, what you will see on applications is a question, are you bondable? What the employer is asking is, can we insure you? For individuals who have a criminal record, the company may not be able to insure them, which is why they cannot be hired. Selecting yes, you are bondable means that you do not have a criminal record. If the employer asks for a criminal record check after the interview, you will have to provide this, as this would be contingent upon completing the hiring process. After the interview is over, there are a few important questions you'll want to ask before leaving. Questions such as who will contact who, and when should you expect to hear back about your candidacy. You'll also want to get as much contact information as possible, so make sure to get the interviewer's business card. You can also ask, what are the next steps in the interview process? Is there a second interview? Is there any other information they need? Finally, make sure to thank the employer for the interview. You will want the contact information so you can follow up with the employer after the interview. A thank you letter is a great way to show the employer your continued interest in the position after the interview. A thank you letter, first and foremost, thanks the employer for considering you. Secondly, it reinforces your interest in the position and reminds the employer of your skills and knowledge. It's best to send a thank you letter within 24 hours of the interview, and emailing your letter is the best option to ensure it gets to the intended person. Here is a good example of what a thank you letter should look like. Remember, it should be short and to the point and free of any spelling or grammatical errors. You'll also want to include your top 2 or 3 skills or attributes that make you the ideal candidate. Sending a thank you letter can be the difference between being an unsuccessful applicant or being hired on. So take the 10 minutes and make sure you send a thank you letter. Thanks for watching, and I hope this presentation was helpful. For more information about our services, please give us a call or visit our website. We would also greatly appreciate your feedback with this or any of our other presentations. Thank you for your time, and best of luck in your job search.